I call to order the August 27th, 2020 School Board Workshop. If you would all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. Sorry we're a few minutes late. Seems to be our MO. Today's going to be, we just have a couple of items on our agenda today, and it's really just a return to learn update. And what I'm looking for and other board members here are looking for really is where are we at? We're a week and a half in to school. What are our pain points? What do we need to improve? What's working well? What's not? Who has hot spots? Who doesn't? How's child nutrition doing? The whole gamut. And I'll let Mr. Caldwell go ahead and present to us. I want to kind of be more of a conversation here that we're going to have today, not so formal. And any question that you have in your mind, please feel free to go ahead and ask it. With that, Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you. We're just going to go through the PowerPoint presentation, and then you can certainly stop and ask questions, but just kind of help us get our thoughts together. And you're exactly right. We're going to take you through about everything we have been doing since August the 17th. And at the end, of course, then we're going to talk about what's next and where do we go from here. So that will be the program. So go to the next slide. And I believe the first one is Dr. King.
Good afternoon. So we had talked about thank you, sir. The fall would look different from the spring. So we are a week and a half in. Today is the 9th day of the new school year. And there have been successes and there have been challenges. And I would be remiss if I didn't start with a huge note of gratitude to our teachers, many of whom never planned to be an online teacher. And have found themselves as a full-time online teacher right now, but also to our parents, to our grandparents, and to our students who are every day showing us their resiliency and their grit and their persistence as we learn. We have over 3,600 active Google Classrooms. That is a change from the spring. We asked for a consistent platform so that not only could our tech department provide support, but also as a parent or a student, you had only one learner management system to learn and to log into. We have added a platform called Little SIS, which is a student information system. And this allows our administrators to be present in Google Classrooms and Google Meets. And so we are learning about that, and we have administrators who have shared positive experiences from being able to, for example, meet a new 9th grade class virtually online.
Do they do any evaluations that way?
We have not started evaluations that way. Mr. Rhodes has gotten some updates from the state board and has passed that along to our principals so far. But I think he might give us an update on that when he gets to the HR update. This is more for, we'd ask them to think about it the same way we would think about if school were in person, how you might drop in a classroom. So that same sort of thing. Instead of walking in a classroom, you're popping in.
So this is going on like all the time?
Yes, sir.
With every class?
Well, we have just trained all of our administrators of how to do that. So they can pop into a classroom and visit.
K-12?
K-12.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We do have the afternoon appointment support sessions, and I have some data for you on that. So far, we've had over 5,600 afternoon virtual appointments and over 1,100 afternoon in-person appointments. So we've had, by day 9, 1,156 students come to school in the afternoons for individual appointments. We've kept all of those sessions at 4 students or less with all of the safety measures in place. And the majority of those afternoon support sessions have, of the 1,156 in-person ones, 779 were in elementary. So the majority have been our elementary students.
Can you just go over those numbers again?
Sure, certainly. So we've had 5,602 afternoon virtual appointments, 1,156 afternoon face-to-face appointments.
How many?
1,156.
Okay. But this is in high school also. This
That was
space-
K-12. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And then of those, 779 were in elementary. Additionally, we've just this week, we did not do any remote assessments week 1, but this week we have launched, according to what we had to by the state, the 4th grade reading assessment as required by Read to Achieve, and it's a remote assessment. We've also started our iReady local assessments to figure out kind of where kids are and where we need to go. And then the number up there for Engage Remote Learning, these are our families who have chosen a full semester of remote. And I mistakenly was telling people we had 415 last week, but then our wonderful Sheila Zachary, our Power School coordinator, found duplicates in there where people had registered more than once. So we're at 389 students at this point. And we anticipate that might go up. With all of us on Plan C, you might not have had a reason to sign up for fully virtual. If and when we go back face-to-face, there may be some families who choose to be fully virtual that haven't told us that yet. Lessons learned. Well, teachers have had to be lifelong learners. They've had to figure out the challenges of teaching remotely during live instruction. Students have had to do that. Families have had to do that. And then, to be honest, we're rethinking our Plan B expectations. When we made our Plan B plan over the summer, we presented it to you. We talked about a concurrent education model with Plan B, where some students would be face-to-face and some students would be joining remotely. And we're recognizing that if Plan C is a challenge, Plan B would be an even greater challenge. Mm-hmm. We've looked at some districts that are in Plan B, and they are doing more of a asynchronous model. When it's your rotation out, you're doing independent work so that the teacher is not managing both the face-to-face class and their remote students. So we have a committee working on that and thinking about what Plan B could look like that might look differently than our original plan.
That's one of my biggest questions about really transitioning into Plan B is, let's say we're in the Plan B and half the kids are there and they're going from 8 to 3. Are we going to require our kids to then sit in front of that computer for between 8 and 3? Would we shorten the in-person session to 8 to 12 to mirror the virtual session? 8 to 3 online is ridiculous.
Yeah,
there's no way.
We have figured that out, and that would not be the expectation.
8 to 12, I'm telling you, I've got 3 kids at home, and it's a struggle. I've got to pick them up by his belt loop about 11 o'clock,
right,
and set them back down to start listening. So 8 to 3 online, I don't think there's any way you can ever do that.
We have a committee that this week is meeting twice to talk about that, and we recognize now this has been good lessons learned for us.
Yeah.
We also have the opportunity to look at other districts that are on Plan B and kind of their models. So I don't anticipate we would be asking students to log in 8 to 3 if it's their time out, their rotation out of school.
But how are you going to do that with the teachers? Because if they're teaching 8 to 3 with the kids that are there, are they going to have to go back and pick that up how are they going to do that on the virtual if it's not, giving it all the information that they're teaching?
We would likely have an asynchronous model, so the students who were at home would be getting their assignments and their materials through Google Classroom, but not be interacting with the teacher unless it's their rotation in person.
So initially they were going to teach, a teacher would teach
Try to do both.
both, but
Yes.
you're saying you're thinking
It's
something
all
else.
right after.
We're thinking,
You're thinking
so
something
that
else.
won't work.
Yeah, we're-
Okay.
I need to back up there. So if it's my children's 2 weeks off, they're just going to be doing work. They're not going to have a live classroom like they have recently.
I think there will always be an option for students to join class,
Okay.
but to force a student to sit for an 8 to 3 at a computer, that doesn't seem reasonable.
So my vision was, because I was going to beg for this when I got here, the 8 to 12 model. So like for right now, the high schools, middle schools are moving through, to 12. Would still be that model. So they're still getting that live teacher instruction, but then from the kids that are elementary and to do some additional learning from 12 to 3, whether they need in school, whether they need homework groups or to go to a resource teacher or whatever, just because, it's not been a picnic, but The only reason why my kids are engaged is because they're getting that live instruction. If we just go to that work, I'm just going to be honest.
Well,
we're gonna
we
be
don't
done at
have a plan B to bring to you yet. We'll bring that at the September 8th meeting.
Okay.
Right now, this committee is meeting to talk about all those scenarios, schedules, access to teachers, access to tutors,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Because the way our numbers, and I'll get to numbers here in my think tank and the health professionals that I've been talking with, our numbers have gone down since we talked about the thirds. So therefore, because when we talked about dividing up in thirds and 2 weeks off, that was on August the 17th when
Right.
the numbers are going down and we're much better. So therefore, that's why we need to bring you a plan B to say it may be 2 days a week, for this group and 2 days a week for this group with everybody virtual in the middle of the week. So it's not going to be 2 weeks at home.
Okay.
That's not right.
Okay,
I think,
thank you.
but now this is kind of what, like I said, we're not ready to present you Plan B.
Okay.
They'll bring it to us on next
yeah.
board meeting.
But it'll be a different plan B.
It will be a different, right now, we are looking at a different Plan B, just due to the fact of our numbers and me talking with the health professionals that we are on, we even got into different types of plans with them to get their opinion from the health side. Because once again, if you didn't know, this is a health issue. So,
But let me be honest, that was the point. The point was for us to learn,
right.
and not jump in head first. And we've have many counties that we can see
Right.
what's going on with Macon County shutting down, with positive cases here and there. For us you can give us the best model that we can possibly have to then get our kids back
Right.
in there. But we'll have that full Plan B, what you think is best at that time, at our September meeting.
September
Okay, sorry, I didn't
meeting.
mean to start sweating, but
No, September, at
I
the
can
September
turn,
meeting
like, me teaching
to
my kids
approve.
alone.
Yeah.
It was
I'm bringing them here.
Yes, ma'am.
Are the cameras from the teacher's perspective turned on for all the kids? I got a call and the mama saying, it's a high school.
Mhm.
The mama's saying her kid is sleep. The camera's not on him from the teacher, so he just goes to sleep and doesn't do anything.
Our teachers request our students to turn the cameras on, but when cameras are on, it does impact bandwidth. And so we don't always we request that students turn their cameras on, but some families' Wi-Fi doesn't support that video aspect. And then we also want to be conscientious of our students who might not want us to see inside their home.
Okay.
But we do request them to turn their cameras on.
Okay. And the other question, and the after hours for like high school,
Yes.
what do they do in those after hours?
They can
Because
have
everybody may have a different need. So what do they do?
they would have an appointment with an individual teacher, might be for academic support or skill support, skill development.
Okay. And we still have them where the parents could look on it at night and see the taping.
They can, yes,
Okay.
inside the student's Google Classroom.
Okay.
Yes.
I know, like just watching my 2 at home, well, 3 when Brooklyn's there too, but so in 3rd grade, all cameras are on. Like if their kids turn their camera off, I hear her teacher going, so-and-so, turn your camera on. I want to see what you're doing, because if not, they're probably doing something they shouldn't. And I know with high school, when I go around the screen to make sure he's not on YouTube or whatever, he's watching the lesson, every kid in that class has their camera off in high school. I guess they are maybe more self-conscious. They don't want the other kids looking at them. I don't know. But I constantly have to go around, and now the phone is in my room the entire day from 8 to 12, because when his camera's off, he's playing on that phone. So I feel that parent that talked to you.
But I think too is that the bandwidth has been an issue, because if a family has 3 or 4 at one time, if they're all on cameras, they're lagging out at the same time. Because
Yeah, I have issues at my house. I have 3 kids that are using, 3 different computers. I'm using my computer for work.
Yeah.
We have terrible cell service, so I have to use Wi-Fi calling, and I think I have 18 devices on my router. It can lag some.
And like even at
what are you gonna do?
my office, we have 12 kids that come in and use their Chromebooks.
Yeah.
And I had to call Morris Broadband just to up the bandwidth just
So
for them.
Well, that's a great setup for our next slide. I'll ask Mr.
Perfect.
Fender to come talk about what drives all of this is the technology support. So I'll ask him to come share a little bit about that.
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
Want to update you real quick on some numbers that you might find interesting. Our help desk, we started running 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the first day of school on the 17th. I basically have 9 technicians. They do 4-hour shifts each, 3 days, and they rotate out. I bought some pretty nice headsets for them, so when they wasn't on the phone, they could continue to work. I wanted somebody there that would speak to someone, a voice that was the whole purpose behind it, that we'd have some personal service. But also I didn't want them sitting there, not able to be productive and just waiting on a call. Unfortunately, there's not been too many times when they was just sitting there. We've had 381 calls since the 17th of August. We've responded to 187 emails to the help desk. And as we've talked about before, update, this is a bigger number than you've seen. We have now 9,382 student Chromebooks out.
How many Chromebooks does that leave us with in case they get broke, in case something happens? Do we have any?
7,000.
We have 7,000 remaining.
Mm-hmm. We have about 17,000 total.
Awesome.
Mr. Fred Klump is currently, him and his staff are working to equip 30 buses with Wi-Fi units. We got those in this week. He has 6 of them, I think, right now, ready to go, except for the solar panels, which we just got in right before I left my office. We need that to keep the batteries charged when they're just sitting there. I hope to start, with Fred's help, getting those out there Monday, maybe even Friday, maybe tomorrow.
Where are you sending those buses?
We are putting together a list, Mr. Craven, of those areas where we feel like the connectivity is the least, where the cell phone coverage is the poorest. Edneyville Elementary will be my first spot. And besides, we're going to start at the schools first. We have 30. So we'll take those schools and go in order of the coverage. And then we've got some other areas identified in the county right now. We haven't contacted those people, but identified as being areas of poor coverage that we think we can get a signal good enough at that location to help those in that area.
So you're putting the buses right now at the school, but
in the
does the Wi-Fi at the school not go into the parking lot already?
It did, Mr. Craven. When there wasn't no staff or nobody inside the school, we turned up those access points really high on the window side, and they would shoot out there. But as soon as the staff comes back, it starts causing interference inside the building. So we had to turn them back down.
And then you're talking about parking buses in a neighborhood, or how would that
work?
We're
going to do it in the school bus parking lots first and have those 23 additional locations so that we have all that parking lot area now scattered all over the county so they can come in and get on Wi-Fi. But
additionally, if I could add something to what Mr. Fender is saying, as he kind of referenced, we're also working with some various community partner agencies. For example, we've had some churches reach out directly to us that say, hey, if you identified that this is an area that would benefit from having a bus, the key is that we have a safe place that people can access where there already is a connectivity issue that doesn't infringe upon, for example, a specific other service. And I'm going to use an example. Ms. Case and I had a conversation about fire stations. Fire departments tend to be great partners, but you don't necessarily want to back up all the traffic at a fire department, right? But a church says, hey, listen, our parking lot space is available all day long, every day, and we're in these communities. And the credit to Mr. Fender and his team, they're making sure that wherever that location is, it can actually then provide the service that we're after. First, you don't want to just drive it out to an area of the community and park it and it not work like your cell phone works. And so we're working with partner agencies, but ideally, of course, our schools can serve that same purpose where we've had to direct our bandwidth to the inside.
Let me be honest here. So if I'm having as tough of a time, and listen, the teachers are doing a phenomenal job. First of all, they're doing great. But having a 5-year-old and trying to get him to learn this, and then going and sitting in a car in a parking lot to do this isn't feasible.
Mhm.
Like that's not going to happen. So if I guess my question is, how many people have we identified that are even going to go to a school or a parking lot to sit there and do their homework or follow along in their car?
No, I can speak as an agency part. We've had 43 people sit in our parking lot and access our internet because they have to call to get the internet password.
43 different individuals?
Yes,
Every day?
every day.
I've been in elementary schools, and there've been parents sitting with their children in their cars on the Wi-Fi.
Y'all, we got to
How
do
many
better.
we can
This
okay,
isn't
so
okay.
listen, that's ridiculous to me.
on.
To be perfectly honest. We should be able, if you don't have Wi-Fi and you have to sit in a hot car for 4 hours with your 5-year-old to do that,
Inside.
that's ridiculous.
Well, now they're
We need to
downloading.
open up libraries. We need to open up gymnasiums. We need to figure out how we can get those kids inside, because there's no way you can learn sitting in that car for 4
I
hours.
think what they're doing is not sitting there for 4 hours. They're coming and downloading the work and then
Downloading
they're
data and
leaving.
Well,
Now,
okay,
how
but
long
you-
does that take? Because I was told by a parent it takes hours to download.
Yeah, but are you downloading the recorded lesson or are you just downloading your work?
Work mostly.
Okay, well, then you don't get to see the interaction with your teacher the whole day. So what's the point?
Y'all, we this is
We
we're
can do
failing
better
our
than that.
kids.
And Mr. Fender, what about these kids that their parents work, and then are we closing? We're not having those buses open after 4 o'clock when the bus drivers are off, are we? How do those parents come to those hot spots or whatever you're talking about, or the Wi-Fi on the bus? How are we accommodating those kids?
Well, the Wi-Fi is always on. You don't have to get on the bus. It's that signal is just being
Yeah.
comes
But I
from
mean,
the bus.
these parents who are working can't bring them during the day.
Right.
So are we doing anything for after hours where they could come to these places to use the Wi-Fi?
Well, they'll still be sitting there and available for them to come and download information.
Oh, so they'll be there all day, all
Yes.
night.
And in
Yes,
the evening?
Yes.
Now, do we have a number of how many students are on like flash drives or paper by any chance? Because I feel that number's probably pretty high, right? In a sense of how many.
I don't have that number, but I think when you hear the hotspot number, that will give you a good idea.
Well, yeah, because that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of the kids, like especially like some of the McKinney-Vento ones, they're on flash drive. So they get 2 weeks worth of work. And then they communicate and work with the teacher, and then they schedule time to go into this once a week or something with the teacher. And then they
So how are we getting a homeless kid in to work with a teacher? I mean,
been doing,
and are the lessons for 2 weeks, is that because I know, especially when even goodness gracious, teaching the way they teach math now to the younger kids, do they have a lesson that's on that they're getting at, not just their work, but the lesson where the teacher is teaching how to do it? Yeah. Okay. I don't mean to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't
Poor
mean to
Rick came up
bombard you
here, and I
either.
was like, "Blah!"
Now,
I just am.
I also like to make point on the 31st, all the libraries will be open.
That's Monday.
Yes. So all Henderson County Public Libraries will finally be open, and they can schedule times to go in. And Trina Rushing, which we're hoping to have a flyer to Jan, that they can schedule a time they can be there at the public library all day long for their schooling if they want. And that's available to any school student.
You know, there's no way this is going to be perfect.
No.
Well, I know perfect, but when I look at, we've 2,300 hotspots requested, and we've only handed out 340. That means we're failing 2,000 children.
You know,
Now, and that's not us. It's not like we've got hotspots and we're hoarding them. They're not here, but
I mean, the bigger problem is
it's the broadband.
everywhere.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what else y'all have in mind, but
Well, certainly the bus is not an optimum solution. It's just trying to offer additional
Oh, yeah.
additional things that they can do in ways that they can meet a need. As you can see, as you just pointed out, we do only have issued 340. Now that 2,303, as you see, does include duplicates in non-cellular areas. What that means is many families, when they went on the form to fill it out, they had 3 or 4 children, they signed up for 3 or 4 hotspots. We don't issue but one hotspot to
Okay.
one home address.
So is that adequate? That one, because I had a parent nail me on that she's got 3 kids and it doesn't work on the hotspot. Do you know?
If you have a strong signal,
Uh-huh.
you can get up to 5
Okay.
on a Google Meet. But you have to have, it's all about signal.
Right. I think this is way out in
Cellular
Cellular
Edmondville.
signal.
Yeah, I think this is way out
you
in
have a
That's
good
Edmondville.
another
signal?
problem in Henderson County. It's cellular
Absolutely.
signal. I mean, I live on 64 in a huge neighborhood, and you still can't call on this thing as a paperweight.
I mean, you know, we have a teacher at West High that lives up North Mills River. They have no cell service,
Yeah.
and they had to bring their kids to the parking lot at the school, even last spring. So it's a bigger problem than we can solve at this point. That's why we need a great plan B.
I actually never
Amen.
realized how many sailor deserts that we had in Henderson County until I really got into this. But you got Girton, Back Caves, Arconia, Deep Gap, the Penrose area, Green River, Hoopers Creek, North and West Mills River, are just some of those areas.
Wow.
I mean, when you look at the map and you kind of draw out those areas, it's like there's more.
Just the topography of it makes
Yeah.
it really difficult. But
It
our
is.
legislators need to work a lot quicker than they're doing right now.
I know.
To make
but we'll
sure
be out of
that-
this pandemic
I mean, first
by
of all,
then.
to me, internet, and we're seeing it now, is a public utility. It's not a, before
Luxury.
it was just a, fancy whatever. Only the rich kids had it. You have to have internet now. Period. Just
For
like
your
you have
job,
water,
too.
just like you
Yeah.
have sewer. You have to have that, and we need our legislators to step up and to get more cell service into these areas. And I know we're not the worst off. I know you go further west, it's a lot worse over there. We need our parents to reach out to our legislators and tell them we need broadband service, we need cellular service here and really everywhere.
And I think we need to write a letter requesting that from our legislators.
We can certainly look at it for sure. How far does the Wi-Fi reach from the bus? Like what's the
It's a pretty, I can't tell you exactly, but it's a significant area. It should cover most of the parking lots completely.
Okay.
Some of those parking lots are bigger than others, but I mean, yeah, it's a nice signal.
And they're going to have the buses there when?
I'm going to start trying to get them rolled out on Monday.
On Monday,
We have
okay.
one fully equipped, but I needed to get the rest of the solar panels in. I got them in today. I'll get them to Fred, and we should be able to start rolling them out at those most needed areas starting Monday is what I would hope.
What's the time of the buses going to be at these places?
They'll be there continuously. Yeah, 24.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Mr. Klump has told me that he will have one of his people checking on his buses every day.
So,
Are they as secure as they can be?
so
As they can
just
be.
to talk a little bit of financial, you said solar panel, like what does that cost in per bus? Do you know roughly?
It's not much,
No?
less than $50.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're only about so big, just enough to trickle charge a battery so that it don't go down because the Wi-Fi unit itself doesn't require
$50? It's about the cheapest thing in public school right there.
I know.
$50.
The beauty of this is also it's on the activity buses.
Right, so they can
therefore,
use it
once
when
this
they-
is over, and hopefully we're back to normal, they can still be used for kids on long field trips, athletics, who kids are still going to be on
Well, that's
Chromebooks, they
cool.
can still
Good.
use this. So this is not just some of this, the
One shot.
thermometers and
Yeah.
some of those
Totally.
things are going to be when this is over, we're going to
A lot of
that stuff's
athletes
going to
do
be
that.
doorstops. But this right here is an investment that will also be used.
If we want to keep paying for the data.
Yeah.
Which is very expensive.
So how much is the data?
Well, it just depends on how much you buy
How
in
much?
bulk. It's about $15 maybe for 2 gig if I'm remembering correctly.
Wow.
I mean,
And
it gets
so,
expensive really quick.
so if they are streaming, then they're crushing 2 gigs really quick.
Oh, yeah.
I think is 158 gig that we've been through in 8 days.
340 devices.
Whoa.
What about these
Build schools faster and get
experiences
all the
of
kids
they're
in
on
before
and
we
it kicks them
spend
off
that
and
money.
on? Jay shared with me one of his kids and they had to get back on like 9 times or something. Is that a bad Wi-Fi spot? Is that over? What's causing
I
that?
guess would be a weak signal.
Weak signal.
If you have a weak signal, you're just not going to be able to stay on.
But it's not.
To be honest, as a parent, I've seen a lot of times with Google Meets, if my son's kindergarten teacher is showing her face on one picture and then she's showing her hand drawing the guy on another picture, and then she says, okay, let's go to Letterland or let's go to another one of these sites, it starts to hang up.
I was getting ready to mention that if you start opening up several tabs in these Chromebooks, remember, folks, these Chromebooks are minimal devices.
Yeah.
They're $200 pieces of hardware, and now we're taxing them big time. When you're doing a Meet and you've got 2 or 3 other tabs open, that processor's like at 95% capacity. And some of that is causing some of this, especially in our older Chromebooks. You know, some of it's 4 years old. And so that's something that
I think there's too many tabs open is what I've
Yeah.
noticed so far.
And we're trying to get that message out there, best practices, you know, to the teachers through our A-team. And the only other thing I have for today is, you know, I've got 500 that I hope to get in here by mid-September.
How much of back order are they on right now? In a sense, have you seen like the
They're,
lag?
they're telling us that I should expect to get them by mid-September.
What's that? The mid-September?
500 more
more.
hotspots.
Oh, okay, hotspots.
Rick, Haywood County's had a disaster there. Are we doing everything we can to secure our system from?
Well, the answer to that is no, Mr. Wood. And the reason that we're not is because we can't afford to. First of all, you can never make yourself impenetrable to these folks. That's just the way it is. You cannot. There are many, many things you can do if you have gobs of money to help mitigate some of that risk. We've mitigated a lot of it, and we've been focused on mitigating more of, if it happened to us, you know, how do we get back up quick? I've talked to you before. We put all of our critical servers in the Microsoft cloud so that if we had a situation like this, we're not going to be able to turn it on like a light bulb and all of a sudden we're back on, but we might not be down a week or 2 or a month, because it'll take a couple of days for us to get over and start running on those other servers. And then when we come back off of them, we got a couple of days, you know, to try to get all the data back in the house. And we've got a very, very robust firewall that we spend a lot of money for. I feel like we've done about all we can do, given the amount of money I've got to work with. But absolutely, are we vulnerable? Yes, we are.
They have a hacker. I didn't hear.
Ransomware.
Ransomware.
Oh, wow.
The whole system. Okay, so
They shut
hypothetically,
down.
we're looking at like 2,300 hotspots. What like estimated cost is like one hotspot? Can we get a number?
It's $300.
300.
$300 per
$60 for the hotspot, and it's $240 for the data, unlimited data for 12 months.
Okay.
For how long?
12 months.
For how many months?
12.
And it's unlimited. That's pretty
unlimited. I
good.
know that's a.
So, because I know there's certain people always listening too, it's like if we could get more of the money, you could buy more of those hotspots.
Well, we've got to be able to get them first.
That's the thing too. You know, the timing of it all.
I could speak to the money. I'll share a little good news, though, with you, and that is Biltmore Church, you may have seen on our social media feed, donated $14,000 directly to us as it related to supporting school systems that are operating during the remote learning period. And they said, what can this need be contributed to? And one of the things, the very first thing that we mentioned is the need for continued hotspots. And so they're essentially able to provide 46 of those to us moving forward with the unlimited data. The next section here relates to child nutrition and kind of our operations during that period of time. I want to specifically remind the board that beginning on August 17th, essentially the first day of school, we began our grab-and-go meal sites at 15 of our schools and Meals on the Bus running 9 routes. That's comparable to what you remember was taking place during the school closure period, so from March until June. So during Plan C, we've been providing meals, again, to the community under the summer feeding program. Our numbers have been a little bit down from what you saw during the school closure period, but we're running at approximately 4,500 breakfast and lunch meals every day right now. We're pushing near 5,000 as this week comes to a close. You can take a look here, and this is just a little bit of data over time. When you think about, we provided this to you on a daily basis during the school closure period, but if you looked at this from August 17th, essentially until yesterday, you'll see that that number is kind of steadily climbing to a degree, starting just above 4,000 meals per day, grab and go, as well as the deliveries. We're providing deliveries not just on Meals on the Bus, but families can also contact schools directly if they need meals provided to children, and our schools are working on that. Yes, sir.
So we were doing, I think at our peak, about 7,000, 7,300.
That's correct.
A couple months ago. Are we still delivering to the Boys and Girls Club? Are we still delivering to the
Yes, sir.
Are we delivering to the YMCA's or the Camp Tacoas or the?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're making the meals available to any place that's also providing the care.
Are they taking that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's a cost that then they don't have to provide.
Where are we off by 2,000? Where are we not meeting?
You know, I can't speak to that specifically. We've definitely seen a decline in the people who are choosing to take advantage of that opportunity, because when I think we can recognize that during the initial period, everybody was at home, right?
Yeah.
And there was this stay-at-home order, and it was sort of like
Sure.
you didn't even feel safe going to the grocery store, and so it was like, I'm going to go grab meals for my family, and then I'm going to come back and get them, kind of thing. We also, there were lots of situations we found where there were children, non-school age children. Because remember, we were feeding 2 to 18. Didn't matter where you were from, or if you lived in Henderson County. If you were a child, we were feeding you. And while that has continued as the stay-at-home order has been lifted and otherwise, we even saw, in our summer program that those numbers kind of were diminished. What we know is we don't want food insecurity to be a concern or an issue for our students or for their families. And so we are continuing to make really proactive efforts to ensure that kids and families who are in need of food or in need of meals, that we're able to provide those, even if that means delivering them or expanding our routes. What I like to say about our Meals on the Bus routes is they're not fixed. When we learn that there's another area for them to be able to go to because that would greatly benefit a particular part of our community, then we're working to be able to do that. What's significant for us is something you have been seeing in this return to learn work, and that is we've been operating under what's called summer feeding.
Mm-hmm.
Summer feeding essentially says feed everybody, and feed everybody at no cost. That every meal you provide, we receive reimbursement for that. That expires on August 31st. Beginning September 1st, Henderson County Public Schools, like all other school systems, this is not a local decision. This is not a decision by our board. This is not a decision by our child nutrition program. This is, like all schools, has to transition to the National School Lunch Program, which is what we would normally operate under, which says if you qualify for a meal benefit, free or reduced, then you receive it. If you are a full pay student, then you have to pay for that meal when it's provided to you. And so we've been pushing out this messaging, the call that you got from me, the messaging on our social media, the messaging on our return to learn updates, reminding folks, one, if you believe yourself to be eligible for that meal benefit, you absolutely need to apply. Because if you are free or reduced, right now there are grant dollars in North Carolina, that's free for everybody. But if you're a full pay student, then those prices that were approved by this board go into effect. Meaning that if my child is a full pay student and requests a meal, and we identify that student and that student number, then that meal will be charged to that individual's account. Now, let me assure you this. We will not deny anybody food who needs it. We will continue to provide that meal. We know that we get the reimbursement for school-age children who are free and reduced eligible. We know that people that are full pay, that we're required to charge that. But we also are going to be tracking those people that come to us that don't have either one of those options. We've had a number of community partners who have contributed to us that said, we don't want food to be the problem. And if somebody needs food, then we're going to pay for it. And so what we really want you all to understand, and really we've been pushing this message, is that, again, September 1st is next week. This is for every family. And so we will have to, when you arrive to pick up a meal, verify your student. You say, I've got 4 kids enrolled with the school system. What are their names? Where do they go to school? Verify that information. If they're on our free and reduced eligibility, those meals are free. If they're not, they're charged to their accounts. It's not a cash transaction. It's charged to that student's account. But if someone has a meal benefit that they would make sure that they submitted the application. And so we've been pushing that information out. We are going to continue, to Mr. Craven's question, provide those meals to our community partner agencies who are providing the care. That we've been working with them to coordinate which kids are with you at the Boys and Girls Club. And if so, how many of those kids are free and reduced, so that we can make sure that those are credited properly moving forward. And so that's significant for us right now when we think about what this looks like. But it's important that everybody hears and understands, again, that critical piece of the summer feeding program shifting to a national school lunch program on September 1st. So I'm glad to kind of answer questions you might have about that.
Don, how many kids do you think are not where they're getting this information?
We hope that there are none. And the reason that I say that is when we did our Return to Learn survey, one of the things that we talked about is how is it that you most get your information from the school system? And I think a plus 90% was that alert messaging system. That goes out to, right now, it's a little over 17,000 phone numbers receive that call every. So you might not be on Twitter, you know what I mean? But there's a reason you got the recorded message. Yes, you might not even pay attention to the Peach Jar updates with Return to Learn and read what's on the website. Okay, that's true. Maybe, but we believe we have a good phone number for everybody. Now, whether or not you'll listen to that whole message, right? Some people do, some people don't. We can see how long you listen to the message and if you listen to the whole thing. But it's why we're repeating these efforts. Similarly, if you're picking up meals currently, if we're providing meals to you, we're providing the same information to you that way as well. So families are able to pick up the meal benefit forms. We're providing the same notifications to them, making sure that we are, to Mr. Craven's point, I think in the last board meeting, over-communicating that this transition is taking place.
Because the groups have been using this for the summer, the staff has really made sure when they go to pick the meals up to even give them forms. They have folders of forms they're communicating to those parents, because that's who we want to make sure they understand. Because if they've been coming all summer and getting this, this, and this, we don't want it to be a surprise on September 1st. Wait a minute, I didn't know this. So we're doing the communication, but especially for those people on the front lines, those ladies in the cafeteria who are working with those parents and those children coming in, they're really communicating notes, sending forms home, sending the free and reduced lunch forms home with those families just to make sure that they understand.
And while it's critical that they do it now, one thing I think to note when you think about that is the meal benefit eligibility that you had last school year goes through the end of September. So it's not like, yes, it's critical that people fill out the form now because a lot of circumstances have changed with many families. But if I was a free or reduced family last year, then that eligibility is going to continue through this next month as this program transitions. And we're going to continue to work with our families on that front.
I'm just concerned about all those poor kids that live in those outer sections that they're getting this information and that they're getting the meals because their parents may work. Mm-hmm. So then how do they get the meals? And some of those are the poorest kids we have.
Yes, ma'am. And that's one of the places I really credit our schools, our teachers, our school administrators, our school counselors, our social workers. You know, I talked to several people, even in this building, who were leaving the office, and I said, where are you guys headed? And they said, we're part of the meal delivery every day. We go to people's houses. We grab the meals because we know a bus can't get to one of those areas. And so if there is a benefit, again, of having been closed in March, is we know who those families are. It's not like we're learning all of this right now. We recognize who needed us to deliver meals to you back in March when everything was closed, who had a food need in that way. And so, you know, we're able to reconnect in that way and make sure that there aren't families who, one, are unable to get the meal. A great question was posed to us on Twitter and Facebook. Once a family said, I got the call, but I don't have transportation to come pick it up, and the bus doesn't come by my house. I'm like, no problem. Call the school. We'll get it delivered to you.
How do parents pay their meal cost, their accounts?
So you have the ability to do it online. You can load a balance to your account, and just kind of like a credit, it can be available to the student when it's there.
So I have a question. So logistically, because I know there's probably people watching trying to figure out understanding about the lunch. So if you have a family and you're going to go pick it up on September 1st, what information do they need to provide?
Simply need to know their child's name and where they go to school.
So if a family, like for instance, picks up at Etowah Elementary, but they have the family going to Rugby and West, they can still go to one location. Still.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what about breakfast?
What about, how do you mean?
Are we still going to be able to offer breakfast for
Yes, sir.
folks?
Absolutely. And a lot of what people do right now is they pick it up kind of like a combination. They say, I want both those meals right now, but we're going to continue to provide both meals. Yes, sir.
So, and you touched on it a little bit. I was wondering who is who are we utilizing? Who's delivering these meals? Is it costing us extra funds? Are we able to dip into some of the CARES Act money for that? Like, how is that?
So in terms of who, I would say everyone. There are child nutrition workers who are doing the preparation, the delivery, and the pickup. They're predominantly in those areas. We have school bus drivers when buses are not running right now that are assisting us with those deliveries.
Okay.
We have staff members who are assisting with those. Like I said, a lot of times our social workers and our school counselors, because they're able to do more than just deliver a meal. They're able to do that check-in. Hey, are you having any difficulty with your instructional login? Is there anything else that you need to, can we check in on what's going on with the family? So we're just finding that direct contact is equally as important as delivering the meal. So in a lot of respects, like I mentioned, there were some people from this building that were part of meal delivery, and they were saying, hey, I'm going to check in on these families because that was an important personal contact that I made during the school closure period. So I think the answer, Ms. Holt, is everybody.
I think, and even community people too.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. Even folks in the community.
That's great.
Now, and sorry, one more. The buses, they'll still continue to be on the same routes, correct?
The meals on the bus routes?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
All right, human resources enrollment update. What y'all been waiting for?
Yep.
All right, I've got a lot of slides, but it's not going to take a very long time to go through this. But I just want to go ahead and give you an update on our enrollment status. So I mentioned to you this number in our last board meeting. This is the number that comes from us from the Department of Public Instruction. This is what they gave us as our allotment number for average daily membership. It's 13,463. If you start to look at what that ADM number has come from the state, we started out in 2017 and 18 as at 13,479. Then it dropped to 13,361 and then 13,334. We will not know what our ADM is until after that 20th day, okay? So when you start seeing numbers that I'm going to show you right now, what I've tried to show you is really apples to apples when it comes to where we were at this time last year and where we're at this year. So week one comparisons between 2019 and 2020 and this year, 2020 and 2021, that's a lot of 20s. Elementary, you'll see that we have a decrease of 281 students. In middle school, you will see that we have a decrease of 71 students. And in high school, we actually have an increase of 39. Okay? For a total of, we are down right now 313 students compared to where we were at this time last year on week one. Again, that's not the 20-day number, but just where we were at on week one. And this is probably a good time to kind of express to you that in years past, what we would see at the very beginning, we would see a lot of folks not bringing their kids really back until after Labor Day. A lot of times we would see a huge uptick in enrollment as the months or the weeks have went by as we get into that 20th day. We are not seeing that right now. A lot of that, again, because we are in a different model. And again, taking attendance, each day is different than, as far as, taking that online, we're getting those numbers. They're making those phone calls and doing the things they're supposed to be doing, but we're not seeing the increased enrollment of parents coming in and re-enrolling their kids. So the grade level data, this is just a little chart for you to be able to look at each grade level and to look kind of where we're at, where that 313 comes from. Now, again, this isn't cohort data. I'm going to show you that next, kind of give you a little bit of an idea. But just comparing last year to this year, again, at this point in time, you'll see that there's 56 fewer kindergartners.
Sixth grade.
128 fewer second graders were the same as in third grade. Sixth grade is a big number.
And 11th graders, huh?
Uh-huh.
Look at how much 12th is up, though.
So where do we think that's?
So I'm going to come back and I'm going to answer all this because I'm going to tie this all together for you towards the end, okay? And I hope that'll make sense to you because, again, as you know, numbers, and you're a numbers guy.
I'm a numbers guy.
Those things can, when you start how you're looking at the data, it can be different. So I'm going to show you another different data set here. So let's look at grade level cohort data. So what I wanted to show you here is just looking at last year, you'll see we had 952 students in kindergarten. Okay. This year, those students rolled up from kindergarten, obviously to first grade. Now we have 902. So we have 50 less students in that cohort. Now, you're going to ask the question, like, where did those 50 kids go? And my answer to you is going to be, I don't know. They could have went to homeschool. They could have went to private school. They could have moved out of the district and moved into a different LEA. There's a whole litany of things that are places they could have went, right? But if you're asking, like, maybe what is the main culprit of that, then I would think that we would look at the issues that surround COVID-19. As you start to look at second grade.
But before you go on,
okay,
are principals not calling those kids?
No, they are. Yes.
And so we still don't have the answer to that?
No, we have found kids in different states. We have found kids who have decided to go to homeschool. I mean, we have asked and made phone calls, and I would refer to Dr. King because I know she's aware of a lot of those phone calls from, like, we found kids all over the place, different countries, different states. Anything you want to add?
Do we document those? I mean, can we say we lost 50 people, but 20 went here and 20 went here? And
We do that as soon as we get a records request from another school that's entered in Power School, so that we can keep track of that transfer.
do we know that?
We can pull that. It's a mix of
You know that?
homeschool, private school, moving in the state, out of the state, out of the country.
If you wouldn't mind, put something together for us, you two, to see where, I'd like to see where these kids are.
Yeah.
For our September board meeting, please.
One thing to note, I'm going to just go back to something Mr. Rhodes said, because we've seen it in our office, especially as it relates to reassignment, is to remember, we don't know necessarily that a child has moved until they tell us that they've done so. And that happens
Right.
one of two ways. Somebody formally withdraws their child, like we can give you a homeschool number because it's in our system, or we get a records request from another school. A lot of school systems across the country don't start until after Labor Day. They haven't even started school yet. So we wouldn't necessarily get a records request until somebody shows up in the front office and says, so we can give a number, but there may still be information where it's like until a school says, John showed up to enroll, we wouldn't have that information.
No, absolutely. I think what's important to see there is just to see, I mean, I knew that we were going to have lower enrollment. I mean, you can, people that are more well off can go and send their kid to Veritas, or they can go to Immaculata, or they can go to whatever they want to do. But most of our folks aren't able to do that. I want to see where those numbers are actually going that we do know. I believe, yes, we're going to be lower this year. If we're anywhere close to being normal, please, next year we'll have a huge influx.
Yeah, and let me say this as well, is again, when we start looking at numbers, and I love numbers as well, Blair, is as we look at them, these numbers are never absolutes. And here's why. We can pull that data for you, and that's not an issue, and that's not my point. But what I'm saying is those things fluctuate because of people moving in and out, the transient populations of some folks, like when we're getting ready to start looking at our enrollment data in July, like who's in Power School at that point in time. Well, that number may have it could have went up from the 952, right, of what that cohort was, or it could actually have been down because kids would have been moved in and out. What we can tell you is being able to look at that information of where we have made those contacts and kind of give you a general idea of are those folks who have chosen, whether it be a homeschool, where they've moved out of the country, where they've moved states, and we'll bring that to you in September.
Moved out of the country.
You spot trends.
Yeah, I mean, the trends are they're going to
there's-
private school,
Yeah.
or they're going to homeschool. Well, charter school, all the charter schools are doing the same
Or
thing we are right
virtual,
now.
yeah.
So
No,
why would you go to a charter school?
And if they move to another county or state, if they're doing what we're doing,
Yeah, it doesn't. That
they
doesn't-
haven't. They may not even register, and until you see a person, they may not be
The
signed
main
in.
thing I wanted to see was homeschool. How many parents
Yeah, I
said,
would
I'm
like-
homeschooling?
Well, I got
And how
listen, I
many of
got
my
that for
kids,
you.
what's Veritas's enrollment?
And listen, I got a big reveal here at the end.
Y'all,
Hey, so you
hey,
got-
what is the famous saying? Wait for the click.
I mean,
Sorry, I've been here
so
for a long time.
I put these
today.
24 slides together for the big reveal here at the end. I got it clear. Let me just go ahead and click this so you can kind of get a general idea. This is our elementary numbers. You'll start to see across. Those are all in the negatives. The cohort data as it goes across.
Wait. Okay, I see. So, and because I know the several slides back, it said third didn't have zero, didn't gain, didn't lose. But our seconds from last year.
Yeah. So that's why I'm warning you. That was the difference between just looking at two different cohorts
Right.
and actually following the cohort information. Because again, I know how we are about numbers, especially one guy in the middle, right? And those numbers don't add up. And I don't want you to think they're going to add up.
Yeah, I'm like, wait. You made a mistake, and I'm not
Listen,
good at math.
I really try not to confuse you because that's why I didn't put the total down at the bottom of this slide. But go ahead.
Scott, how many did we end with in
As
these
far-
grades? At the end of last year, how many did we end with?
I don't have that right now, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
Because the top number is a 20-day number, right?
That's the 20-day AD.
Yeah.
We got the,
That's a good point.
yeah.
Right.
But go ahead.
All right, so let me go ahead and then I'll show you. So again, last year we had 1022 in fifth grade, and when they rolled up this year, we're 46 fewer. Fewer, a -8 here and a -6 of those numbers. And then when we look at our high school, here's a
Parents don't like
positive.
the middle school
because
kids at all.
You got to think about Mountain Community doesn't go to high school.
Immaculata.
Church
Okay,
doesn't
We're
go to-
plus 55 as freshmen. We're looking for all the good news we can find. All right.
So Immaculata.
Optimism. Then we go 10, 11, and 12, and we start to see that decrease. So right now, if we start looking at what's the overall cohort decrease, what's an average? Okay,
like a
that average
class.
right now is we're about 23 fewer students per cohort. And right now, we've been able to track how many students do we know that have chosen homeschool right now? And that's the big reveal. It's 161. So if I were to refer back to our 313, because really,
Like half.
at the end of the day, if you're talking to Bernie and I, what we're really thinking about is what's the bottom line? The bottom line is we got 13,346 is what our goal is. And right now we're about 12,984. Okay. So we're well underneath that number. When we start looking at 161 kids who have chosen homeschool, that makes sense. And we also recognize there are a number of parents who have decided not to enroll their children in kindergarten this time. They are going to wait for a year before they do that as well. And so a few things I think we would ought to keep in mind, because again, none of us here can predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen, right? But I think as our numbers continue to get better and as we have opportunities to start bringing kids back, I do believe what you're going to see are parents choose to bring their students back. Again, we are the best gig in town. I don't apologize for saying that. We offer the best possible education in our school system that we can offer any parent. And I think people are going to come back to us. What we hope is the General Assembly will make some allowances for that and not use just the 20-day, 40-day. Let us get
Punish
past
you for
that.
that number.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the dollars are going to matter at the end of the day. And we don't know what that's going to look like. But right now, that's the enrollment update as we know it for Henderson County.
And we
Public
haven't
School.
heard anything We haven't heard anything state-wise about them adjusting that by any chance. I mean, I'm assuming y'all talk.
No, they come back to town. I think they come back to town next week. I think the
They're
General
campaigning
Assembly
right
does.
now.
And as far as a push from our group is they got to please just hold us harmless because just provide us our allotment
Every
numbers.
school system is going to see this.
Right.
There's no way that you're going
I
to
know,
not
I'm just-
see this from these school systems.
Right.
And so-
Across, I had a meeting this morning with the superintendents across the state. Everyone's putting their numbers in. Everyone's got a negative that I saw. So therefore, this is just not a Henderson County issue. This is a state issue.
Even with option B.
Even with option B, people were losing some.
Yes,
Yes.
kindergarten. I mean, they just can keep them out. It's
keep
not
them for another year.
illegal. It's they can just keep them out a year, and I don't. In many cases, that's their best option.
Yeah, and Ms. Case, I do have, you asked a general question. I can kind of give you a general idea. So when I started looking at, again, I explained to you that Bernie and myself and Kelda Livingston, when we start really digging into our allotments in the springtime each year, we do start to look at the number of kids that we have at that moment and we roll them up. And that's the best way we have found to equally allot teachers within our district because that's real-time data about who's in our system. When I started looking at that data this morning about what did we have when we did our allotment meetings, that would have been most likely March, April. So those numbers would have been close to the end of the year. We had 3 schools that actually gained students between then of what we projected and actually what they came up with. And those 3 schools were Atkinson, Fletcher, and Sugarloaf. So there's not really, if you start looking at what, communities, it's hard to tell of trying to find anything, but those 3 have actually increased. Everyone else across the district went down at some level. And so that kind of give you a little bit of a general idea.
So, and I know you always figure this out. Are we going to technically lose any teaching positions, or did you kind of already plan in case of this was that?
So we have planned, to, how the best way to put this, Mike? Mr. Asher, we're in a situation where we have planned for that, Okay. Do we have enough physicians that we've not distributed out to cover everything? Not sure at this point in time. Okay. But as we continue to look at our 20-day numbers and as we continue to wait to see what the state comes back to us with, we'll have a better general idea of how we're going to move forward. But we do know the numbers.
Well, thank you, sir. And that Yankees face mask would look better with the Braves face mask after that doubleheader sweep yesterday.
Yeah, well, I didn't send you a text after we won 2 in a row.
If you're going back and we'll certainly, we'll send you these slides, but Coach Wood, Ms. Case, Ms. Corn, for those who've been with Harrison County for a long time, if you go back and look at the numbers, there always used to be 1,000 basically per grade level. And this is not, we've been losing kids for the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. This is, and I think what's hurt us now is this number looks so big is because of us losing kids over the last 3 or 4 years and then turn around and having to deal with this virus as well. So it's kind of a double whammy. But if you go back and look, that 9th grade, 10th grade, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, then drops to 900, 900. And all of a sudden now we're 800. So, or just barely over the 800 to 900 mark. It's Henderson County, as far as attendance goes with children, we've been kind of going just a little bit down the hill. So when you look at that data, go back and look to see, because it used to be a solid 1,000 across the board. Because you continue with the roll-up numbers we get to high school are not going to be 1,000. They're eventually going to be 900. So we're going to go from there. Yeah. All right. Very quickly, I'm going to, Dr. Brian's calling you. Let me go to.
Calling me.
Let me, it's amazing.
That is a question I have. On my phone, it says potential spam, and it's coming from Ellenboro, North Carolina.
You know why?
Why?
Because you didn't listen and you didn't put HCPS in there.
And as
right. Make that as a contact.
But why Ellenboro?
It's just the call center. It's just where it originates from.
Yeah. So once you get it, then I did the same thing.
I'm supposed to do whatever.
I didn't answer it the first time, and then all of a sudden I went back and it was Dr. Brian. I added it as a contact.
Okay.
Right.
I'll make sure to do that this time.
Yes.
I did the same thing with Kathy, and she's like, Michael, you got to add it.
All right. Let me kind of bring you up to date. You've heard basically what's been going for a week and a half. Let's talk about what's next. Let's talk about September the 8th at the board meeting, what you expect to see after 6 weeks. Where are we going to be? What do we need to do? As I keep saying, this is a health issue. So we're so fortunate here in Harrison County. I've had 2 meetings. Dr. Brian's attended those 2 meetings with local health leaders, with doctors giving us advice on what it looks like for reopening. And it was kind of interesting. Then they supplied me with all this reading material. They kept sending me this reading material after reading material. The best one is when can schools reopen? The answer is part science and part guesswork. And that's kind of what one of the doctors told me today after we started batting numbers around. It's almost you're going to have to flip a coin. But I feel like we're at a good place. We're going to use, because there are also so many different numbers out there. Percent tested and percent positive. And we're coming on this one with the Harvard Global that Dr. Bryant will work you through. Where do we go? What numbers do we look at? And what's a good number for us? So we can come in here on Monday, the 8th, and say it is a recommendation from this health group that here's what we need to do to reopen. Okay, so let's go to the numbers right quick, Dr. Brian, and run them through what the Harvard Global Health Institute has to say.
Absolutely, Mr. Caldwell. And as he referenced, and I'm going to talk about the 2 bullets that you see down at the bottom, just to again reference the data source. I'll share all this with you following the workshop today. So if you want to reference, it is interactive data and white papers associated with that, so you can see it. But essentially, what they're doing is there was consensus among this group that Mr. Caldwell is working with that it was critical that we were all operating from a similarly vetted data source. You know, when we talk about what information are you using and where are you getting it from, that this Harvard Global Health Institute, as it related to looking at data and risk factors, metrics that were built on calculated daily cases per 100,000 in the population, And you're going to see a couple of examples of that. I want to show you here for a second. And what you're going to see is a little bit of history that takes us back to July when we were having our conversations about our decision making. And in short, as I mentioned, this is an interactive map that you can look at here. It's drilled down not just on the global level or the national level, but specifically to Henderson County and Henderson County's cases per 100,000. You see that 53.7. This is July 13th we're looking at. The daily cases per 100,000, and we're looking at a 7-day average at that time, which is 27.7. And then it essentially established a risk level associated with that, and then it identifies total cases and total deaths. Just as a reference point, that risk level, if it's greater than 25, it's considered red, which is that highest level. If it's between 10 and 25, it's orange, intermediate. Yellow is between 1 and 10, and then green, like you're in the clear, so to speak, is less than 1. And so I'm going to just show you kind of a moment by moment as this board was making decisions and the school system was making decisions. We see that daily cases per 100,000, 7-day average was 27.7 in mid-July. On July the 20th, it was 21.7. Again, you notice that the risk level was starting to decline, and you'll now watch the slope of the line on the right at that time. Mr. Caldwell talked about the community health trending in the proper direction. On August the 3rd, you're looking at a 7-day average of 10.5. On August the 17th, the first day of school, that daily average now to 9.5. And then you'll look at August 23rd, essentially the start of this week, and this is the graphic that you see on the right-hand side. Where we're kind of steadied right now is this 10.6 number, and we're still in that neighborhood right now. Again, this is a live interactive map. I'm showing you screenshots specifically of the data. But when it comes down to that daily rolling average, they're just looking at what way or what direction is the health data trending as a way of helping you to make decisions, those key metrics. And again, I believe it was Mr. Egoff that made a comment about the student enrollment and determining the withdrawals for trend data and how valuable that trend data is. That's what this group of health experts really encouraged us to look at was, are we understanding which way the data is trending? And certainly we all know in mid to late July, there was a concern regarding we were kind of at our peak locally and at the state level. But since then, the good news is with the behaviors that people are modeling in our community and people taking that seriously in order that we can get to a place of return to a face-to-face environment, we're seeing that data trend down. Yes, sir.
Is it still taking 10 days to 2 weeks to get those test results back?
No. That is not what we're hearing right now. What we're hearing is that they've actually got really good turnaround time, like oftentimes 24 to 48 hours.
Okay. So this data could be at most 2 days old?
I can't speak specifically for this data. It's being pulled from the WHO and otherwise, but I can tell you from our think tank group, one of the questions we asked is, what's the delay locally right now? Right. So when we look at local data, are we looking at real-time data?
Looking at 2 weeks ago. Or
exactly. And what we heard from that group, which was really powerful, was that there's not only a healthy testing supply and a stable testing supply, but the testing turnaround is stable as well. Because when it was 7 to 10 days, it was like, okay, great. We know what yesterday is, but we're really looking at something that's 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that's awesome.
In Henderson County.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Henderson County.
We're looking at Henderson.
Awesome.
If you look at the right, and why I would really invite you to look at this, and I'm going to kind of just draw your attention to this. These are not live slides, but this is every county. So you can actually look at every county in North Carolina and what their rolling average is, all the way across, like where the trend data is going the wrong way, where there are areas of concern in hotspots. And so these are not the only metrics, of course. We're also talking about, the hospitalizations and our key partners talking about capacity, but it's helpful to understand how these inform. And so just in summary, you can sort of see, again, noticing which way the data is going, Like I said, we're hovering around that 10.5 right now, the 7-day moving average. And then what that means for us moving forward.
And if you start to look at it, when the think tank started wanting to start focusing on this is because basically it's per 100, it's a rate per 100,000. You start getting into percent tested. Well, percent tested could change because your denominator could change on how many people you tested. And then we could have cases in some of our long-term health care that could really blow some of this out of the water. This was what they decided was the best, okay? And then I said, okay, that's great. So what number do we need to have to be at? Okay. And to be honest with you, that was a great discussion between the doctors themselves. To be honest with you, we had a doctor who felt like Henderson County Public Schools before we brought kids back need to be at 7.5. Okay. We had other doctors that said if you're at 10 and you're holding 10 steady, then they felt good about it. Okay. But then also the doctors also realized there's more than just numbers. And there's more to school than just numbers. So therefore, I think here's what I would like to do is to bring that recommendation to you, which we're going to meet one more time. But they're going to say right now, if we're in Henderson County, if we're approximately using a rate factor of 10 on the 6 weeks, we should be able to open up in Plan B. Okay? And that will be a recommendation coming from this think tank at 10. Now, here's my plea to the community. If the people who are listening to the community has to help us. They're going to have to wear masks. They're going to have to wash their hands because right now our schools are safe. It's what the children will bring into the from the community into our schools is really what's going to hurt our numbers. Now, once kids get into the schools, all of a sudden you say, wait a minute, we're now at 11, we're now at 12. Well, we'll evaluate that. And we'll start looking at clusters. What happened up in Western North Carolina? I think it was Macon, okay? The children didn't close that school, unfortunately. It was the staff. It was the number of teachers where they couldn't find a certain number of teachers to cover. Will we still have that? Yep. Sure. I talked to a superintendent the other day. They're on Plan B. His motto is don't worry, don't panic. Don't worry, don't panic. He started a high school with no administrators on Plan B. Why? Why is because, once again, you had a principal, 2 assistant principals. They're in a room. They're working on schedules together. Okay. Next thing you know, from the community, the assistant principal's wife gets tested positive. He gets tested positive. And then the next thing you know, okay, both the other ones have to be quarantined. So they're starting school with no administrator. Don't worry. Don't panic. He took people from the central office and put it at the high schools. There will be times that we'll have to do this. But the think tank right now believes that 10 for our rate is a good number for us to look at B. And for us to look at B, we would like to bring you what that B would look like. Now, also we got into, is there a difference in children from basically 5 to 10 and 10 to 18? Because sometimes you read there's a difference and sometimes that you read that it's not.
What do you mean a difference?
Can they get? Do they get it faster? Do they carry it? Can they transmit it? Transfer it more? Are they symptomatic, asymptomatic? All of those things. And we had a great discussion about that. I think after the tank got through, they believe that right now, what was that? Tank, excuse me. My board chair told me we're supposed to be through at 5.
Excuse me.
So therefore, I'm going. I'm trying to go. But what we're trying to do is after talking to this group, we decided that in their opinion, there is a difference. Now, they still told me, though, that there's really not right now, and still not enough research and data, because the only children that are getting tested, the only children right now that are getting tested are the children, number one, who have the symptoms, or number two, their parent has it, and so they're getting tested. So therefore, there's not a lot of research out there, but the research that this group has done feels like that this 5 to 10 group is just a little bit, I guess, Dr.
More resilient, a little healthier, a little less susceptible to the negative effects of what you might see. And so just kind of recognizing that our youngest children present less risk when you talk about the work that they're doing. And I think that's also a critical piece, as Mr. Caldwell is saying, is you remember from our opening slides in July, everything that we're doing is about mitigating risk. There is no elimination of risk. It's about recognizing, whether it be youngest population or otherwise, we're creating the safest environments possible. We're creating the safest practices possible. And we should acknowledge at the same time that at no time is that saying to anyone, there's no risk. In the same way that we recognize that with all things. And so we recognize the prioritization, as we talked about under Plan B, of our youngest children. You know, when we think about remote learning and otherwise and how we support our youngest children, but also that's coupled with, you know, affirmation from our healthcare leaders who say there's less susceptibility for our youngest kids.
There are two key points that we're going to work on next week. And as board members, you might hear, why are they asking us this? Okay, because the two key points I need to know is, number one, okay, after the 6 weeks, we're going to go back face to face. Are you going to bring your child to school? Because once we were on C, we felt like there was a drop off on people signing up. But now you know on the 28th, if we go face to face, first question we need to know, and we're going to get this data next week, is, are you planning to return, if the board approves this on the September the 8th, are you planning to return on the 28th?
And that's going to be, let's say the parent says, you know what, I'm comfortable doing remote. Is that going to be until the end of the semester that they have to choose that?
We have asked parents when they sign up to make at least a 1 semester commitment to help us plan.
No, I think it has to happen that way.
Yes.
It has to.
So-
We need to reiterate that. This is for the semester.
Yeah, and I just want to beg, this needs to be tied to a kid's email account, not to everybody and their mama, because I give zero stock into that first survey because I know that there were people taking it multiple times.
So this is not going to be a survey. This is every teacher calling every parent, asking them, especially in K-5, because K-5, once again, my group told us that we could look at bringing back more numbers in K-5 than we should in 6 through 12. But the numbers depend on how many I can bring back, because the other question I got is how many are going to ride a bus, because I still can only put 1 child per seat. So if all K through 5 says they're coming back, nobody wants to go remote. And then I bring back 6 through 8 on an A-day, B-day, or 6 through 12 on an A-day, B-day. I don't have enough transportation. We'll have to look at a schedule change where elementary comes at 7:30 and high schools come at 9 to do the busing. If I have 30 to 40% of my K through 5 saying we're going to go fully remote, then there's a breaking point that I have to look at transportation as well.
But we don't need to make decisions. Excuse me. We don't need to make decisions based on transportation. If transportation is the problem, then let's reach out to community leaders, parents, PTO, whatever. And I know we can't take the liability, but let's not say we can't have school because we can't have buses.
No, and we're not. Like I said, we could even adjust schedules, Mr. Egoff, if we have to adjust schedules to get the children there. Okay, I do know a couple of superintendents who are on B have brought in empty buses, because a lot of times parents now are not putting their child on this and making that choice. It might be our plea. Look, we're going to run buses, but it would sure be great if you could bring your child or carpool to help us with this.
I mean, I'll go to the auction, get a 15-passenger van, and I'll wake up at 7 and pick some people up if they want me to.
Right. I think what you're going to hear from us is the schools are going to start talking about those two key points. You're going to be remote, and if you are, that's great. We're going to please enroll. And if you're not, are you going to ride a bus? Because once we have those two numbers, then on the 8th, we'll bring to you what we feel like is the best plan that matches those two numbers for the 6 weeks on September the 28th. Here's what it's going to look like. Okay. If, once again, the community will help us wear a mask, wash their hands, social distance to keep that number at a safe level. Because that's where our doctors are telling us for this rate needs to be around 10. And that's where we are right now.
So I've got a question. So on there it says adhere to Governor Cooper's DH guidelines, right? So is he suspected to speak again around that time?
The September the 11th, I think, is to go from phase 2 to phase 3, and that's around that date.
So if he goes to phase 3, potentially
You know,
little bit more
I've asked for
flexibility.
any hints. I'm hearing rumor he's going to stay at, and once again, I don't even want to say
Right.
that. I've heard
I'm
that he's
just-
going to stay 2. Some people telling me, or he's going to go 3. There's not been a mention at all that he is going to do anything with schools at this point and tell them to go A. Now, we're going to talk about it because all of a sudden I feel like that I don't want to have a board meeting on September the 8th that we're going to go B, and all of a sudden he announces on the 11th that we could go A. So I think there's got to be some discussion about that.
The most important aspect of this, and we have to let our administrators know, filter down through our teachers, we need to know those numbers. We need to know accurate numbers of who's coming to school, who's riding the bus. You know, way back when we did the first survey, and I know whatever the survey is, there's about a third said I'm comfortable bringing my kid back. A third said I'm not comfortable bringing my kid back. And a third was somewhere in the middle. So either group could still, either one of that third group, but whatever. I suspect, and it's just me guessing, that we're going to see an increase in that number that says, you know what, I'll stay home virtually for this semester. I really do, because from what I've seen from my teachers, they're doing a phenomenal job right now. And if that is the case, then we can potentially bring more of those K through 5, K through 8, whatever kids back to school.
Sure. If you have a school, a K-5 that have 400, but 50% of them, 50%, then you can bring all K-5 back.
Absolutely.
Not sure, like I said, we're really not going to make that change in middle school and high school at this point, because I think that 10 number is still high. If we get it down to 7, then we might start looking at it. Because if you go back, and Mr. Campbell could probably help us with this, but when we build schools, the older children have the smaller classrooms. The bigger they are, the smaller the classrooms, which really make no sense, but that's how it is. The smaller the children, closer, narrower. So you're still with this, 6 feet of social distancing. Even we were doing some reading for, if you're always wearing a mask for some of our elementary kids, you can even do 3 feet facing forward and some of those types of things. So we are truly blessed in Henderson County for these doctors to give the school system an hour and a half of their time talking about this with us, because I think in talking to other superintendents, they don't have that luxury. They're out there making this decision on their own. And for us to come up with that they feel good that 10 as a rate with us is a good rate to have. Keep it below 10. And right now we're at 10.6. I've got to have the help of the community to keep that at 10, because yes, we want kids back, but we want kids back safe.
And I think it's also a good point too to understand that the general legislators, they gave the Department of Health and DHHS the authority to make the recommendation and improve on school stuff. It wasn't a governor executive order as well. So if the health officials don't feel comfortable, then they can keep us closed or make any type of recommendation they want.
And that's correct. And I wanted to verify that. That's exactly right. The governor's phase B or phase 2, phase 3 will not make a change in schools. The General Assembly gave the authority to make the call on schools to the State Board of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services. So the governor might make an announcement about what schools are going to be doing, but he'll simply be announcing what the state board has decided to do. So I think that's a very important point for folks listening too, is if the governor makes a call to go to phase 3, that doesn't necessarily mean there'll be a change to the law and the health guidelines for schools. That comes from DHHS and the state board. That's exactly right.
So I need a couple of minutes here. If you guys will give it to me, and if you want, then you can just go while I'm talking. This whole, have you heard that? Like, what's my love language? That whole last presentation, that was my love language. That's what I wanted to talk about today. I want to ask for every board member to go home and come back on September 8th with what is acceptable to you to open these schools back. These parents deserve to know. When these schools were closed, they were closed not because we all might catch COVID and we're worried about people having a sickness that's like the flu. They were closed for hospitals being inundated and not having enough ICU beds and for deaths. In this county, we have had 3 deaths that are not related to a long-term care facility. 3. Then people might have died of the flu anyway. I mean, how do we know? Our hospitals are not overrun. I have data that I get multiple times a week from the hospitals. Right now, we have 7 ICU beds at Pardee that are due to COVID, and 3 at Advent Health that are due to COVID. Once again, 3 deaths in our community that are not lifetime care facilities. I think that it's wrong for us to keep our schools closed and our children away from education, away from, I know you guys must have seen on WLOS where there's home abuse going on and it was caught on the camera. These kids are in bad situations and they need to be in school. So that Mr. Caldwell can come back with what the think tank recommends, but it's us that are sitting in these seats that need to make this decision. And we need to be upfront with parents because this pandemic is going nowhere. We are not getting a vaccine anytime soon. We're looking at dealing with this for another 15 to 18 months, period. They're going to come out with the vaccine at sometime in 2021. Who's going to get the vaccine? I'm sure is not going to get it in the first year. I don't want to be that guinea pig. My kids aren't going to get it. Am I going to get it eventually? Well, absolutely. But and that's going to be the situation with most of our community. And we are in these seats and we're making these decisions, and we need to be upfront with parents so that they know what to do. So I think, if for you that's, those doctors recommend we're at 10.0. I'm comfortable with that. That's fine. But we have got to be upfront with parents so that they know where we're going this year, and they can make some tough choices, because we're causing, some family members are paying, $1,200 a week for care for their kids. And it's just not feasible for them to keep doing this. Parents aren't going to work because they can't leave their kids home alone. And we've really got to get this plan. And I realize that with Plan B, there's going to be so many bumps and hiccups, and it's not going to be fun. We're going to be calling school at certain places because the cases are way up in so-and-so's class, and it's going to be a pain, but it's our duty to provide this education to these families, and it's their right to make their decision if they want their kids there. Just like it is with our employees. If they don't feel comfortable, then they just need to not come. It is what it is. We've got to get these kids back in school, and we cannot wait until the end of 2021 to do it. And that's what we're looking at if we're still going to be on the cautious side.
Well, and I want to piggyback on what you said, because I had a great teacher at UNC Chapel Hill who's a statistics teacher. And he said, 1 + 1 is whatever you want it to be. And so we can make these numbers. We can go to different sources, and we can make these numbers, and we can play around with them. We can make them anything we want them to be. But we have got to know, I've got to know in the bottom of my heart, I know I'm a minority, and I know I'm a minority here in the county with thinking this way, but we can't possibly think we're doing justice to the students of Henderson County. After Mr. Fender came up here and said what was going on, and you just can't possibly think that way. So we've got to figure out a way. Now, look, my son, a senior, loves it. Okay, well, that's fine. But you know what? The K through 5, we've got to figure out. I don't care if the numbers come back 11, 12, 13. I don't care. We're not doing our jobs as educating the kids in Henderson County. We got to figure out how to get those K through 5 here in school, learning to read and having them progress at a normal pace through school, or we're not going to be able to do it. And we've got to figure it out. And I don't care what. Well, I do, but and I'm still going to be a minority, but that's fine. But we've got to figure it out.
Yeah, and I don't want you guys to think I don't leave my daughter, or Brooklyn when they're on those lessons. The teachers are doing amazing. Yeah. But my kids have a mama sitting right there with them from 8 to 12. I run to go to the bathroom, and that's it. Because if I come, I'm hearing drums in the other room. If I'm in there going to the bathroom or something, I cannot leave my kids. And the teachers they're knocking it out of the park.
Absolutely.
But if you ask me what is Brooklyn learning, she's 5, not that much. She needs to be there. She needs to be in class with those kids. And is there a risk that she's going to catch this? Yeah, but there's a risk every year she's going to get strep and get the flu too. It happens.
And I'll say this real quick, then I'll be quiet because I know you're up, Michael. My 5th grader, my 11-year-old, we say our prayers every night. Do you know what she prays for at night? She says, and I pray that I don't get kicked off the internet. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what she prays for. And then my 11th grade, my freshman, she started crying last week about. I'm like, I can't believe this is going on, but it is. But I'm just concerned about the youngsters. I'm really everybody else. My freshman, she's gonna have to figure it out and handle it. But the youngsters that are learning to read and are learning how to wait in line and learning how to play and learning all those socialization skills that you learn at school, they've got to go on. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
I'll try to keep it pretty simple on this part. I think all of us here agrees the younger ones need to go back to school in any way possible. It's not saying that we don't care, but we also have to be careful with it. And if we have to go in sections and we're staggering them in, we stagger them in.
Yep.
But here is something, and I even talked to Dr. Bryan about this earlier. Us as a board, us as a community, if we keep looking negative at this current learning environment, our kids are being negative about the current learning environment.
Amen.
And I telling you, I work with the most struggling kids in the community, but I'm trying to stay positive for them, because if they know that I'm being positive, then they will be positive. They learn by our actions. And for the parents that are struggling, trust me, I see you. I'm listening. I'm hearing you. But don't be afraid to reach out, because the staff is here. Jan King is here. Dr. Bryan is here. Bo is here. The principals are here. The teachers are here. They will make every effort to make sure it is the best education that can humanly possibly be given right now. And I know I'm sounding like an optimistic person on it. And I know some of them are struggling really hard. But if you need to, you can show up at my door and I will print the assignments for you if you need me to. I will do everything backwards and forwards to help make sure that everybody has the best education as possible. But please be positive. I understand we all have our opinions. And I think that's what makes America great. But we have to be positive. The kids are learning our actions, and the world has enough negativity as it is.
But that's easy for you and I to say when I can be home every day from 8 to 12 with my kid. And honestly, I love it. She's doing great. It's good for me to see what she's doing. We're not having an issue at my house, but I've got the highest speed Morse broadband makes. And I'm there. There's parents that are leaving their 10-year-olds and 8-year-olds home alone. How are we going to fix that for them? That's the problem. I'll be positive about it. I'm positive around my own kids. I'm not negative
That's
around
not
them.
going to change anything.
I just keep telling my daughter, like, would you want to do this for the whole semester if we go back? You like to be at home with mommy. I mean, she doesn't see that it bothers me. I don't let her see the world's problems. But as a board member, I need to think about those kids that are home alone, 8 years old, and can't get on the internet and is having issues. I mean, that's a reality. And whether it's negative or not, it's negative. There's kids out there that are not getting a lick of school right now because they don't have internet connectivity and they don't have a parent at home with them.
I really wouldn't object if y'all decided that, we could bring kindergartners back in less than 6 weeks. Whatever date that is, because kindergartners and first graders, first of all, that would give those elementary schools a little taste of, instead of having everybody and they've got to take temperatures and you said something about stand in line, those kids have to learn to stand in line, be 3 or 6 or whatever the going rate is apart. And
they're going to be the toughest one. Get your mask on. Get your mask on.
It's changed over time. I
That's a great idea. Do we have to wait 6 weeks
I
for
don't
like
know.
the?
Do whatever you
I'm
want.
for waiting 6 weeks from Plan B in general, but just those little
Yeah.
kids, kindergartners or K1 or whatever. I don't know if that.
I move we bring back kindergarten and first grade at starting the day after Labor Day, the 8th. I think Monday is too soon to expect those parents to be there.
People plenty of
But
notice.
I think on the 8th.
Hold on. We got a motion on the floor.
Well, it's
Work session. No motion on the floor.
No motion on the floor. Well, then let's all
She made a
discuss
motion.
doing
she
it.
did. Oh no. I'm just saying, if the leadership team thought that was even a possibility and they could prepare and whatever, then call us back in and we'll say yes or no.
Everybody's emotional about this.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that we are in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
I realize that, but we're losing our kids.
I hear you. But
We need to get emotional about this.
Yeah, but it just even the question too is like, Jane King, is there any way we can find out how many that are not being interactive, or like, is there a way we can track the attendance in a sense currently?
We are tracking attendance, and every student that we are in contact with is either on internet because they have it, or they're on paper pencil assignments, or they're on the USB drive. And some of our families with internet wanted paper pencil anyway because they didn't want screen time, and we've accommodated that.
But we technically have not lost anyone completely, right? There
No,
might be some that are lagging.
Yes, and then we have some students who we know have moved or withdrawn to another school.
how quick can you get the administrators to start calling these parents to see who's going to come back, who's not?
It's our plan to be doing that next week.
All right, let's get it.
Tomorrow's Friday.
Yeah, tomorrow's Friday. Let's get that going Monday. I want to know, I would like to see concrete numbers before Labor Day. Concrete. And they have to opt in to come or whatever it is. And if they don't opt in, then they're on virtual for the year. I need to know a hard number of kids that want to drive the bus and are willing to come to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can make a decision.
And Mr. Craven is exactly right about making decisions on an emotional basis, and I'm terrible at that. So I'm glad you said that. But I also don't want to leave out the EC kids. So if we're talking K1,
Absolutely.
2,
I think we automatically know.
assuming EC.
I mean, we know our 504 kids, our IEP kids, our kids that are in a home situation that's not ideal.
Yep.
Our socioeconomic, the 2,300 kids that need a device or need a hotspot, and I know that some of that's repeating. Let's really look at those folks. Let's find out a hard and fast number. Once we get that, we can really start to make some real decisions and real plans.
That's our goal is to have that.
And you know, I'm gonna be honest here. You know, communication. I know our teachers. The communication at the beginning of the year wasn't the best, in my opinion. I want to impress upon you that Mr. Rhodes said it. I love numbers. I need these numbers prior to Labor Day.
Can we do like surveys better, more detailed?
No, I don't want a survey. I want them to call each and every individual. I want you to call every single kid, and you get a hard or fast answer. Yes, I'm coming back. No, I'm not. Yes, I'm riding the bus. No, I'm not. Period. And then if you don't answer that before this date, then you are no, you're not. Right? So that we can have some real data to go off of. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. We're on the same. We had this same discussion this afternoon when we were talking about this. So yes, it was our goal. It was our goal to have this by Thursday of next week.
All right, please have that data to us by that Friday so that we can look that over before that Tuesday meeting.
I feel like that's way too long for those kindergarten and first grade babies.
I was just going to say,
talking about it.
It's 8 days.
Right. But then you're going to talk about it. And then when are you going to give the parents notice to
You
do
call
that?
them on the Tuesday, Amy. I mean, it's 8 days. I'm not doing anything without knowing the data. period.
No, and Blair's right, but I want everybody to know that's watching or listening or sitting in this room that we will do anything and everything possible for our kids. We just got to get the data as soon as possible. We will meet every single day if we need to, or whatever we need to do.
Sure.
That's our commitment to the kids.
Absolutely.
And but we do need good information to make good decisions.
You do.
So as soon as we can get the information, but let's have a meeting the day after we get that information, however long it takes.
Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled for September 8th. The Labor Day is Monday the 7th. Today's the 27th. So if we call, and I want those teachers and admins calling Monday morning.
And there's no school on Labor Day.
There's no school on Labor Day, right? So we're calling Monday morning, and we're finding out, and we're getting in touch with all these kids. If we can't find them and reach them, send the social work out to them. Send the SRO out to them. Send whoever.
You know, it'd be a good idea to get the paper to know that.
Send it to everybody.
I mean, the Bill Moss, the Lightning, and we need to get this. We got to get this information in fast because Amy and everybody else in this has spoken is right. You know, we're losing them slowly day by day. We need to get them back in.
Well, and I think the other side of that is that we need, you know, which of course you guys will, you know, with this, but touch the teachers and the custodians and the, you know, cafeteria. How comfortable are you if there's going to be kids in your, bus drivers? Can you drive? I mean, we've got to know those answers so that we can move staff if, you know, you're high risk. And so you cannot, you know, come in at all. We've got to know this stuff so that
that's important for those numbers as well, as Mr.
Right.
Craven said,
That's right.
because every school is not going to be the same.
Right.
You may have one school that might have in a second grade 30 of the kids who are going to be remote, and in another school you may have 5. So it's going to have to be different in how we're going to use staff.
And the interesting thing, I was reading some data, and who knows what's right or what's wrong or what data is correct or what's not, but I saw where you would think that folks that made more money would typically keep their kids out, or they had different options. But the percentage of people that made less than $50,000 was actually double keeping their kids virtually than the kids that their parents made over $100,000. And it was really interesting data. I never thought that would happen ever. And so that's why we have to know these numbers so that we can make appropriate decisions.
Do you know if those that have already chosen virtual or
340 something.
right are the biggest percent low socioeconomic, high socioeconomic? Do we know?
We do know that out of the 389 students who already committed to a semester of virtual, 52% of those students qualified for free and reduced lunch last year.
You see, and does that
And
even
we're
make
still
sense?
in the verification process for this year. So,
And that's really interesting. And that is interesting data right there. Like half of those kids are on free and reduced lunch. And what is it for a family of 4 for free and reduced?
the
4,000
threshold,
or
I don't know
something?
the threshold off the top of my head.
And now, were they older, younger, all over the board?
It's a variety all over the board. Yeah.
But isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I
That
would
data
never have
is
thought
insane.
Well, just like, I mean, in Dot Case was the closest one in the classroom. Like even some of the McKinney-Vento kids that I'm working with right now, if they had the option to select all virtual, they would, because they can work.
Yeah.
They can provide money for their family. or
Go to
stuff
get a
like-
job work.
Exactly. And then they can do their schoolwork later. So this has opened so many different opportunities and doors right now.
For people that might,
Because we keep thinking about the little kids
Do.
and their parent lower socio. That's interesting.
it's really interesting. And I thought, I've seen a lot of data on a lot of things, and you don't know what to believe these days from
Yeah, I
half of this or whatever. And I read that article, it was in the Wall Street Journal, I believe. And I was like, really? Really? It blew my mind. And that makes, kind of quantifies it for our district. So it's important. I've said it again, get those teachers on it, get the principals on it, call them, find out. If you guys need to do internal surveys for your teachers to find out what your staff is looking like, get it done. But I want to know those numbers before September 4th. Deal?
Yes, sir.
Deal. Let's do some
It's
child
already
care
on the plan.
updates.
I will honor the time because we're slightly over your
Hey,
expectation for us.
listen.
But I'll work.
It's
I'll
okay.
work through this relatively
I
quickly.
was trying to get Jay to get to Raleigh. I know he's got his son has something
sir.
going on.
Thank you.
Surgery.
Absolutely. Well, this is essentially just our follow up to the board's direction to provide you a regular child care update as it relates to our program. And so what you're going to see here is some basic information that I'm going to share with you regarding what happened over the summer. As you all know, we began providing child care at the permission of the Department of Health and Human Services and the governor's office since the pandemic began. So we started in March providing child care. We've run that all the way through the summer. Here's a look at what the summer enrollment is. We're talking daily averages. We don't have 0.2 and 0.6 kids who are showing up anywhere, but you're looking at daily averages at Fletcher, daily averages at Sugarloaf, and what we were doing in our summer programming. That's our plus programming. We ran it at 2 sites, predominantly utilized by families who use childcare with us historically. That is, of course, significantly less than would be operating in a normal summer when we look at what our enrollment can be or our maximum capacity. That's based on staffing, health and safety guidelines, and otherwise. Specific to that, when you think about our program, you also know that we began running a child care for Henderson County employees and then for space availability for people in the community beginning as school started. I just kind of draw your attention to this particular chart. You can kind of see how these numbers are starting to move inversely a little bit in terms of as once school is started, that was primarily a workforce stability decision. As we've gotten our feet under us, you're starting to see more and more spaces available to families in the community. Those are people who, again, have utilized childcare in the past. Remember, we're talking childcare service for grades kindergarten through 5 is what we're talking about. That's what our centers are licensed for. We're offering them based on the staffing that we have available at 4 sites. That's Fletcher, Hillendale, or Hendersonville Elementary, Mills River, and Sugarloaf. When you look at this community number, which right now is 56 for the total of 137, if you were to go to our website right now where we post childcare offerings, there are 13 vacancies. There are spots at each of those sites for people that need childcare in the community who might choose to use it. And so we're continuing to fill those as the need is available in the community. When you think about the update as it relates to, okay, so what's the position regarding our child care? We reported revenues and expenses to you as of June 30th. You know that the operational profit and loss is a number that's a bit lagging. I won't get into that. You've heard that from Bernie before. But when we look at the total differential as of June 30, it ran at a negative $22,588 as of last fiscal year. They currently ended the year, June 30, with an unaudited fund balance, the cash that's available to them of $230,000. So what that means for us moving forward is we want to look at what are our operational costs as the year has started. What does that mean for us? You saw the way in which the enrollment is shifting a little bit. Our full pay or DSS reimbursements tracking at about 40% of the student enrollment as of the week of August 24th. And so this chart is going to be one of the things that we're going to share with you every time you ask us to report. So what does that mean? So you look at July, our limited numbers in terms of actual revenue. Remember, that was all students who are either paying or are eligible for DSS reimbursements versus the actual costs associated with that. It ran at an operational loss of just over $25,000. We project, because we can look at the number of enrollment, the costs associated with that, the salary costs associated with it, that our actual revenue is going to be a little over $56,000, and our expenses and costs in the month of August, which ends on Monday, is going to be a shortfall of just $2,500.
So that's because we're having that inverse relationship with our workers are bringing their kids less, and then now the DSS vouchers are essentially taking over to pay more expenses.
Some of that, yes, sir, absolutely. And so Mr. Socia can speak to the reimbursements that come directly to child care, but absolutely, if we didn't have families from the community who were either DSS eligible or full pay,
56 in the hole.
Potentially, yes, sir. At worst, you're exactly right. And so when you look at that, one of the things we want to be able to share with you based on the direction that you've given to us is, one, what are we looking at during this current period of time? What's happening right now in terms of our child care offerings? And then ultimately, what can you start to expect based on those costs? Do you want to speak to the revenue monies that have come in and the reimbursement dollars?
Yeah, there was one piece I was talking with Stephanie this afternoon, actually, on the revenue. They received an additional $30,000 from DSS, which they are trying to find out what grant that is for. That is additional DSS dollars that they received. Don't have the details on it yet, but we know we received it.
Per COVID or per just what, something?
It showed up in the bank yesterday. So
is that part of that projected or the revenue?
That projected number, yep.
Well, that's not good then, right?
So, right, that would be,
I mean, you're not getting 30 grand from DSS every month, so.
So the expense that we had in March, April, May, I guess part of June, where we were keeping first responders' kids for free. Who paid for that? Was that part of our CARES Act that we used money to pay, or?
we received $46,000 by CARE for the emergency person.
And where did that come from?
That was DSS money.
It came from DSS.
Well, as part of the CARES Act, correct? As part of the CARES Act.
So did
they
that
filter
fully
through.
cover that expense? Or we received 40 something and it was 100 and something expense?
So I don't know the number of emergency care personnel children that were being kept. They just gave us that based on the enrollment. That was supposed to cover those children. That was how the formula was.
Did it cover our expenses?
Yeah.
That was what it was supposed to cover.
But have you put it in the books and seen if it covered it, or we were in the hole, or?
Well, you just showed we lost 20.
But
Right,
that's
but
July.
that was the position prior to the closure. And so I
Prior
think
to the
Ms. Holt's
closure.
question is, the reimbursements that we received were eligible to be applied in order that there was no programmatic loss after the closure period.
Okay.
So essentially, when you think about the financial position after all the reimbursements came through, and again, you correct me where I'm wrong, essentially bring you back to wherever you were in March when everything closed. And so then all of those reimbursement monies that we were eligible for, everything that we received, because the governor's office and DHS directed child care providers, if they were able, to provide emergency care to emergency services workers, and the people that chose to work did so, and we provided care to that number that you saw. That those monies were intended to cover your operational costs during that period of time. That ended in June. And then we were running our own program like we normally do, Summer Plus program, starting in July.
Okay.
So in July, when you look at that operational number and that loss of $25,000 in July, that's with no supplementary dollars. That's just full pay and or the monies that are coming in for the program. Right.
Wow.
And so the goal, of course, at the request of the board, is to share with you this information regularly so that you see those numbers, that you understand what is the position of the program. You can imagine that when we talk about Plan B, you're talking about PSAM and PSPM. You're talking about continuing child care services and expanding those child care services to the community during that period of time as well. So
I'll be interested to see September's numbers, and then once we go to Plan B, what that starts to look like and how that shakes out, because it'll start looking more normal, hopefully.
Yes, sir. And so our goal
Normal for that program isn't good.
Well, that's another.
Well, but ideally, we never got a chance to fully experience the rate increase that we
Oh,
had
that's
either.
right. That's right.
So a lot of the action that we took, we haven't
cut
seen any.
off
We haven't
in
seen
March.
it. Exactly. We
Right.
haven't seen
Okay.
any of it. So what I would ask of you, in order that we can be the best servants that you need in terms of what we're presenting, is if there are questions or information that are related specifically to this that you would like to see. You talked about your currency, making sure you have the information you need to make decisions and discussion, then let us know, because when you ask for a regular report, we want to provide you with enrollment numbers, position numbers, and how that tracks moving forward. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
now
sir.
we've stopped the RFQ or whatever it was that we put out. Okay, because
We've not taken any action with that since we approved a rate increase, so we could determine how that moved forward. And again, of course, then the world was flipped on its head. So we've taken no action on that.
Okay.
Okay, this question doesn't have anything to do with money.
Then please ask it to me, not
Bernie.
Bernie.
It's only money. So, how many of these kids have tested positive?
I can't answer that question specifically for our group. I'm not aware of any instance of positive test for a student. I know that we have had some instances in which there have been concerns for children and families, but our child care services have run safely since they
Have
opened.
these children been wearing masks?
They are not. They're not required to in licensed child care providers. That's a great question, because
And
that will be different than school
There's that in the
operations.
pictures.
Licensed child care providers for elementary age students are not required. The adults have to, but the children do not.
And so they don't have the mask or the 6 feet
They follow social distancing
They
and,
do,
and washing
okay.
their hands and those, but they're not required to wear face coverings.
They reduce their numbers.
Their density, right? They're running in groups that are 1 to
As far
14.
as you know, none of those children tested positive.
No, ma'am.
And the health department didn't call our child care saying, you need to, this parent is tested positive, so that kid's been with it, and you need to, none of that.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
No, I move we adjourn.
Okay.
Do you guys have anything else to let us know first before?
We're on it.
All those in favor say aye.